This CASA 4x4 is a work in progress. It's driven by the feedback from the investor panels at the Asian Agricultural Climate Finance Summit held in November 2021. We're grateful to our champions who shared the thinking of the panels about the opportunities and challenges for investors in 4 areas. And we're also grateful to our event partners, Grow Asia. This 4x4 has 4 areas of insights with 4 minutes to answer each point. What are the investment opportunities for climate-smart agri-tech for reaching net zero? You will hear a quick summary of the issues from Jonny, Climate Change Manager at CABI, and then John Friedman from AgFunder and Matt Hague from CASA will share the investors' response.
In terms of reaching net zero, as I mentioned, the role of agriculture here is absolutely critical when it accounts for nearly a quarter of all greenhouse gas emissions. Although forestry and livestock are the main sources, crop agriculture is also a major part of that, including how it's changing land use and clearing forests for further expansion. So we need to identify what the opportunities are to leapfrog to more efficient and low carbon production systems and systems which are more resilient to climate change.
Essentially, I think we were exploring just from our own experiences, from our own investment bodies, the challenges of where we are today. And is our portfolio perhaps set up to be able to answer, like, we are able to deliver net zero, or we are contributing X. My own sort of sharing from our side, we invest sort of across the agri-food sort of value chain and also early stage. So perhaps we could identify where as a business scales, they would be able to deliver X amount of savings in terms of whether it's CO2 emissions, or I guess for the topic today, we're focused more on net zero. But to have the sort of the toolkit and reporting methodology down pat, so that as the businesses scale, they can actually be quantifying this. How do we capture that sort of collectively, as I said, because not all of the companies that we're investing in, or even Tambusu's fund, are necessarily addressing or working towards net zero. So I think we're just sort of identifying where we might sort of fall short. Sources of capital, I think, was an interesting topic of conversation. The sort of evolution of the sort of principles or the capital allocators, the impact investment mindset, and how that sort of might vary from one region to another, the sort of level of education that is sort of required still in the market, and oftentimes the challenge that we're faced as, let's say, GPs in terms of the commercial versus sort of impact performance, whether or not there is a trade-off. Is this still considered sort of philanthropy versus the sort of return profile that we should be looking to achieve in a venture technology type fund?
So we talked sort of briefly around some things that we could be looking at right now. I think in the production of novel foods, and then also looking more towards sort of cold chain, so reducing waste is a key element of working on this. So we start to reduce the amount of production that is created in the first place, looking 10 years ahead on how we're going to be reusing and recycling products more generally. So not necessarily just in the agri-food part, but further upstream. So we can start to cut down on that initial demand for raw materials. The sort of fundamental challenges are around whether markets are believers in the greenhouse gas emissions methodologies that various investees are using to justify their investments. I think improving the believability of the narrative that we're selling is really key. And then in terms of sort of partners, we were thinking that there's perhaps an opportunity to get fund managers collaborating, so that we start to sort of coalesce thinking on the credibility of different sort of climate indicators. This is sort of as part of a broader conversation around impact. One of the areas that's the big impediment to impact moving that narrative into mainstream investment. So one of the things to do there is to improve the evidence base. But with these new taxonomies, we're moving very much into this direction of non-financial reporting, which will strengthen, I think, the persuasiveness of the narrative around climate change and net zero.
The CASA programme is proud to be building partnerships across the world to drive investment for climate-resilient agri-food systems. Visit the events page, past events section, to hear other expert viewpoints shared in the CASA 4x4s and webinar series.